Hey, what is going on, you grumpy goocher? Coming at you with what I am most excited to try out of Temporal Forces, and that is the Great Tusk Mill deck. Before I jump into it and break it all down, though, gotta give a huge shout out to Dragon Shield for sponsoring me, the content I do here on the YouTube channel with the live streams, and as a competitor. I personally use their matte shields at every tournament I go to, so I recommend those. But they got the classics and the dual mats as well, and they actually just came out with some new colors. A purple and a green, the soul and the power. They are dual mats, so yeah, go check those out. dragonshield.com. Link, of course, will be in the description as always, and you can use code AzulGG over there to get yourself a discount as well. So the Great Tusk Mill deck revolves around, of course, this ancient Great Tusk Pokemon. For the first attack, 2 colorless energy, you mill the top card of your opponent's deck, but if you played an ancient supporter, you mill 3 more cards. This is the only attacker in the deck, basically. We push up the Great Tusk, and we mill cards turn after turn after turn after turn, and that is the goal. Just Great Tusk after Great Tusk after Great Tusk after Great Tusk. And it's been a while since we've seen a top tier, high tier, maybe even just like competitive mill deck, to be honest, but I think the Great Tusk might get the mill decks back into the meta. Up next, we have a Comfy in here, just a one of. And the reason we play this Comfy is it gives us something to kind of push up into our active spot and then utilize that flower selecting turn after turn after turn, because we do play 2 emergency board in here. We haven't really had a pivot tool card in a little while. In the past, you would see people playing like one of Mysterious Tail Muse with air balloons and stuff like that, but the air balloon has rotated, and in the past you'd even see a skateboard, of course, comboed with the old Jirachi and Floatstone even, but we haven't had a tool card we can really utilize with a pivot Pokemon in quite a while. And we're finally getting one back now in the emergency board, so the one of Comfy is really, really nice. They KO a Great Tusk, we push up the Comfy, we use the Comfy, dig a little bit deeper into our deck, retreat into a new Great Tusk, attack with that Great Tusk, and repeat. For the Radiant Pokemon, we got the Radiant Greninja. Gives us a little bit of draw power, gives us a way to get energy in our discard pile for our Professor Sadas as well. Can't go wrong with the Radiant Greninja. And the last Pokemon, I guess we really only play 7 Pokemon in here. The last Pokemon in the deck already is the Pidgeot V. And although we are trying to deck out our opponent, we actually run into trouble where we start to deck out pretty quickly ourselves. And the Vanishing Wings from the Pidgeot V prevents us from decking out, because we go through our deck really, really quickly thanks to the Explorer's Guidance. New ancient supporter card here. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck, take 2, and then it discard the other 4. So between that, using Radiant Greninja, using Comfy, and then constantly putting all those cards in play to use with our Great Tusk, and our opponent really not playing too many cards on their turn, because they don't really need to create new threats, because we're not really taking out our opponent's threats. We're not KOing our opponent's threats because we're milling our opponent the whole time. Because of that, they don't have to like really play cards. So we are milling them for 4 cards each turn, but because we have to play an ancient supporter every single turn to actually mill 4 cards, we're actually playing more cards than our opponent, or discarding more cards than our opponent on average. So because of that, we have to play the Pidgeot V alongside the Explorer's Guidance and the Professor Sada and all of that. Otherwise, we would just deck out first, to be honest. For Explorer's Guidance, and I really, to be honest, Explorer's Guidance is a pretty terrible draw supporter overall. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's pretty bad, but we really don't have a choice. Like, we could just play like 4 Sada with a bunch of Pokegears and a bunch of Pal Pads, but I think the Explorer's Guidance does work a little bit better than doing something like that. And we also play double Turbo Energy, because it does take just 2 colorless energy to attack with the Great Tusk. So because of that, you can use Explorer's Guidance early on, dig through the deck, find the double colorless energy, attach those to our Great Tusk, and then mill with the Great Tusk. And then the other ancient supporter we play is that Professor Sada's Vitality. Of course, we can only play 4 double turbos, so that's not quite enough to win the game or mill as many times as we'd like, but get some Professor Sadas involved. That accelerates some basic energy to play onto our Great Tusks, and then we can attach return with some basic energy, and that creates more Great Tusks to attack with. And yeah, we can attack with that 6... hopefully 6 Great Tusks throughout the game. Hopefully we attack more than 6 times, but we'll at least be able to attack with 6 Great Tusks. And then this deck is built pretty aggressively. We don't really need very much to mill each turn besides playing a supporter and make sure we have the energy on our Great Tusk. So we got 4 Earthen Vessel in here to find our energy, get it into the discard pile for the Sada, get it into the hand for the Greninja to draw some cards. 4 Nest Ball in here to help find our Great Tusk. Battle VIP passes in here anymore, so we got Nest Balls, and we have some Artisans in here as well, which we'll get to. And then to help find our supporters aggressively, because it is so important to find them, use them each turn, we do have the 4 Pokegear 3.0. Now, we are a mill deck, But there is a little bit of disruption in this build as well. Currently have 3 counter catcher, and I honestly could actually see going up to like 4 counter catcher, maybe even playing something like an Erica's Invitation. A couple different cards that you could play in here to kind of make your opponent play the game a little bit more. One other card that I'll mention that I've seen a lot of lists, including that I haven't included quite yet myself, because I'm not sure what matchups it really fits into and if it makes sense to include, is the Mimikyu, which can't be hit by V or EX Pokemon. So that's something you can like put into your active that kind of makes your opponent maybe play the game a little bit more, and maybe is even burning more cards on your opponent's side than attacking with a Great Tusk would, right? If your opponent has to all of a sudden play an Iono or play a Research and then play down 2 or 3 more cards out of their hand to be able to respond to a Mimikyu, that's potentially even better than using a mill attack on the Great Tusk. But yeah, counter catcher can kind of do the same thing, right? We play a counter catcher, we bring up something that can't attack on our opponent's bench maybe, and then all of a sudden they have to play cards to be able to move that Pokemon. So 3 counter catcher in here to potentially do that. But like I said, Erica's Invitation, stuff like that could also be a consideration. 2 Pal Pad to recover our supporters. We draw really aggressively through our deck, and the Explorer's Guidance discards cards really aggressively, so need some supporter recovery. And on top of that, we do need some Pokemon recovery. If we want to attack with more than 4 Great Tusk, which we usually do, need to be able to recover them. So we got a couple Super Rods in here for that. A couple switch cards so we can potentially move any slow starters that we might have. If we open the Greninja or we open the Pidgeot V, we need to get him to the bench, but also be able to attack with a Great Tusk on the first turn. So a couple switch card in here can solve that problem. And we do have the Pidgeot V in here, so we might as well include a Forest Seal Stone. So I got a 1 of Forest Seal Stone in here because why not? You know, we can just go Nest Ball for the Pidgeot V and then Forest Seal Stone to it. And at the end of the game, well, I guess at the end of the game we have no deck left, so it doesn't matter if we have the Forest Seal Stone on the Pidgeot or not because we have everything in our hand. The other new card is the Hand Clippers that we have. Actually, there's a couple new cards in here. Another new card that we have in here is the Hand Clippers. Both players discard cards from their hand until they have 5 left in their hand. So the reason this is good in mill decks is a strategy that a lot of decks will utilize against mill decks will be to, once they set up their attacker that can sufficiently deal with the Great Tusk, they will then just draw cards for their turn, and then draw their prize cards, and those will all start to accumulate in their hand, but they won't play any of them. And then they'll also try and get a Shuffle Draw supporter into their hand, a Judge, an Iono, something like that, and then towards the end of the game, when they have like 2 prize cards left, and maybe only like 2 cards left in deck, they'll play the Iono, they'll play the Judge, they'll put all those cards in their hand back into their deck, and they'll end up with more than 4 cards in their deck. But you could play the Hand Clippers possibly before they get to do that, and that could be the difference between winning or losing the game at that point. So just 1 of Hand Clippers in here for right now, but I could see going up to a higher count potentially. Haven't really tested out with it that much, so I don't know where we'd want to sit at with a Hand Clippers count, right? So I've thought about it, haven't really tested with it, but I like the idea of it, of course, because that is a strategy that I've seen implemented over the many years that I've used many times against mill decks myself. It's just get a Shuffle Draw supporter into your hand, accumulate cards in your hand from your prize cards in your top decks as you draw your prize cards, and then play the Shuffle Draw supporter on the turn before you're about to deck out to put more cards back in your deck so you don't deck out and your opponent doesn't win the game. So I really love the idea of the Hand Clippers in there. 1 Heavy Ball. We need this because we need to not prize our Pidgeot V, or we'll deck out first. And then we only have 1 Radiant Greninja, 1 Comfey, so it's helpful for finding those as well. And it doesn't hurt if we prize a Great Tusk on top of all of that. 4 Ancient Booster Energy Capsules. We want some tanky Great Tusks. We want to make it as hard as possible for our opponent to actually draw prize cards. So we got 4 Ancient Booster Energy Capsules. Tanky Elephants. 2 of the emergency board, like I mentioned earlier. We want to be able to pivot our Comfey around. Also, it's like an effective switch card for like the Pidgeot or the Greninja as well. So if we open Pidgeot or Greninja, this also helps move that out of the active. So we effectively have like 4 switch cards to move our turn 1, if it's our turn 1 active Pokemon, if it's not a Great Tusk, into a Great Tusk, so we can get off that turn 1 attack. For the A-Spec, we've gone with the Hero's Cape. Just boost that HP once again of the Great Tusk to 240, actually. It's a little bit higher than the Capsule. Once again, making it a little bit harder for our opponent to potentially get a knockout. Something like Charizard only hits for 180 damage. So if you got a Capsule on there, you got 200 HP. So Charizard can't KO you unless they have a Lost Vacuum. Most Charizards are playing at least 1 Lost Vacuum. But if they only have 1, we got 4 Capsules and a Hero's Cape. That is a lot of HP for them to get through. So Yeah, specifically in the Charizard matchup, we can make it tough on them. And then even something like the Arctina matchup as well. They don't want to really attack with more than just one Arceus the whole game, because every card they take out of their deck to set up a new Pokemon, well, that's less cards in their deck, which means we get closer to our win condition of milling out our opponent. So if we got an Ancient Booster Capsule or a Capsule on our Great Tusk and our opponent sets up a Arceus V with a double turbo, they're only doing 108 damage, and then they have to go either set up another Arceus with 3 basic energy, once again more cards out of their deck, effectively milling themselves for us. For the stadium count, 4 Artisan. We need some way to find our basics. We got the 4 Nest Ball in here, but I feel like we definitely need a little bit more. 4 Artisan might be a tad overkill. Can maybe bring it down to a count of 3. And I think that would probably be if like I'm trying to add anything on top of everything I've got right here. I think the card that stands out to me the most to potentially be cut is one of those Artisans. It might be a tad overkill to be playing 4 of those on top of the 4 Nest Ball, especially with how few Pokemon we have. Like, we don't need to get a ton of Pokemon in play, and we just need to, and we don't need to like continuously set up a ton of Pokemon throughout the game. It's just like one Great Tusk turn after turn after turn, and at some point we'll have more than enough Great Tusk in play and won't need as many basic Pokemon search cards. 4 double turbo energy, like I said, does attack for 2 colorless energy, so we can combo that with an early Explorer's Guidance, or even maybe a Sada and get a Great Tusk attacking through the double turbo energy to start milling our opponent. And then for the basic energy, which I've been forgetting to like show in the last couple of videos, I don't know why I like set it off to the side usually and then forget. But yeah, 6 basic fighting. It allows us to potentially even attack with the Great Tusk's second attack. We can do 160 damage for fighting, and double colorless. So we could get 4 basic fighting on there, 4 basic fighting on there through 2 attachments plus 2 Sadas, or Sada attach into a double turbo also allows us to attack. So if our opponent, you know, decides, hey, my current attacker can one-hit KO your Great Tusk, why would I set anything else up to knock out your Great Tusk? Then we can be like, okay, cool, we'll knock you out 160 damage over 2 turns. Or if we're up against like an Arceus V-Star deck and they only set up 1 Arceus, we can be like, oh, cool, you only have 1 Arceus in play. Well, I already have a fighting energy on this bench Great Tusk. My turn starts, Sada to the Great Tusk, attach a double turbo, and knock out your only Arceus in play. Now you can't even attack next turn. I didn't mill those cards that turn, but now you're in a more awkward spot yourself. And we could even like win the prize trade potentially up against something like an Arceus deck. It would be tough, I think, overall. I think they'd probably be able to rebound eventually. And once Arceus players figure out that they have to set up more than 1 Arceus, probably, to be able to keep up with the Great Tusk, they'll probably have a backup Arceus already ready to go pretty quickly into the metagame. But yeah, that's it. First take on the Great Tusk Mill. Nothing too crazy, I would say. Nothing that I haven't seen in every other build of the deck so far. But yeah, this is by far the deck I'm most excited for. We haven't seen like a solid mill deck in a while. And I know these kind of decks can be a little bit annoying to play against or frustrating to play against. But having something like this be popular in the meta is way better than something like the Stall Snorlax deck. So yeah, this alternate win condition is a lot more enjoyable to play against, to be honest. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, as always, leave a comment, leave a like, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.